This is the fifth video of the series, and in this video we'll be talking about loops. In the last video we talked about list, tuple, and sets. We have now the knowledge that we can create a big box and store multiple items in that box. Now the question comes to that: how can we access each and every individual elements inside that box? We saw in the last video that we can print an element from that box by using print grade 0th element, that is this 100th element, and we'll print the just one element. And to print all the elements inside the box, we have to, if we go with this method, we have to make multiple print commands saying grade 0, 1, 2, and 3, and so on. Now, just imagine if you have thousands of elements inside a box, you have to have thousands of print statements to print all the elements from the box. So there has to be a better way to do what we want to do, and it's to take less than 2 lines, or less than 2 to 3 lines to do the task. Here the loops can really save us. So we will look at for loop to do this task within 2 lines. So first of all, let's make another file and we'll save it as for while if .py. We have the same grade. Now if we want to print all the elements inside the grade, we can do a for loop. For loop is an iterative loop in which is gonna go into the box and look for all the elements, and after it has printed all the elements, it's gonna break, it's gonna stop. So we'll say for x in grade print x, and that's it. Now this program should be able to print all the elements inside the grade to the console. So what is happening? So I'm declaring a variable called x. X is just a dummy variable which points to every single element and gets the value of that element and prints it. I'm saying for x, for elements in grade, print the element. For elements in grade, print the element. That's the simplest for loop to print all the elements that are there inside the grade box. So let's save it and let's go to the terminal. Cd stock, and we'll do Python for while. It prints all the elements inside the box, inside the list. Now this is very easy case of doing a for loop. I can also go ahead and multiply each element with 2, and this will result in getting all the elements, each element getting multiplied by 2. 100 into 2, 200, 160, 140, and so on. I can also add 2 to each element. We'll add 2 to each element. I can do all sorts of mathematical operation to each and every element and print them. Now, in the previous video we have seen that to take a sum of the list, we can do sum grade, and that will give us the sum of all the elements inside the list. So what if I want to do sum of all the elements with the for loop? So I can declare a sum variable, sum grade, and I can set that equals to sum grade plus x. So what will happen is, initially the sum grade is equals to 0, then 0 plus x. X is the first element, is 100, so it will be 100. Then I will take x is 80, so 100 plus 80 is 180. Now sum grade has 180. Then the x is 70, so it's 180 plus 70, and so on and so forth. And then at last, the sum grade will hold the value of the sum of all the elements. Now let's print it. What do you think it will happen? will it print the sum of the variables inside sum of all the elements inside the list? Let's see. It gave me an error. It said some grade is not defined. Well, we did define it inside the for loop, didn't we? We did. It's defined, but Python is not able to print it outside the for loop. So whatever variables you will declare inside the for loop will only exist till the for loop is running. After the for loop is done with its job, the variables get destroyed. So to remedy this situation, you should have the sum grade variable already declared before calling the for loop. So in this way, we have the sum grade already defined, and this sum grade is exactly the same box that we already have on the stack. If you don't have this variable already on the stack, for loop, when we get inside the for loop, it's gonna create a variable on the stack, and it's gonna pop it off as soon as the for loop has been completed. So, and another thing that I want to do is, instead of writing sum equals to sum grade plus x, I would write sum plus equals to x. That's exactly the same thing. It's going to do exactly the thing that it was doing previously. Now let's go to the terminal and run the Python. We got the sum of all the elements inside the list. This was to demonstrate the for loop in a very easy case. Go ahead and try to build some things like try to have a list of 1 to 10 and then try to make a table like 2 into 1 equals to 2, 2 into 2 equals to 4, 2 into 3 equals to 6, 2 into 4. So it should go through the list and produce a table to me or to you. Try doing that. If you're able to do it, share the code with us down in the comments. If you have any doubts to how to solve that, and then we will go through the solution in the next video. Okay, now that we have learned the for loop, which is an iterative method of going through the list and printing it out or doing operations on it, let's look at something different than for loop. Let's look at while loop. So as the name says, while this is true, do this. If this is false, then break. So while loop is very, very useful when you are doing something as, let's say, we want to make a program which asks the user to enter its age, and if the age is below 18, the user is not able to vote. The user has no right. The user is not aged enough to vote. It's not applicable to vote. Now, if the user is greater than or equals to 18, then the user can vote. After the program has been run once, the program should be able to prompt the user by saying, do you want to continue? That means, do you want to enter another age? If the user says Y or yes, then it should rerun the program again without us being involved to typing Python and the program name and hitting enter. It should rerun the program till the user wants. So let's look at what I just said. So we want to ask the user to enter its age. So we will declare another function called def ask user, and inside that function we will say age equals to input enter your age, and we will return the value age. Now after we have done that, we will have a user response equals to true. Then we will say while user response equals to true, then we want to do something. So what I did over here is I stored true inside user response. True is a boolean. It's a boolean. Boolean is 0 or 1, true or false. So I stored true inside this box. Now I'm comparing. Now this double equal sign doesn't assign the value to user response. It checks whether the right hand side and the left hand side has the same value. If it does have the same value, then it's gonna do some task that we gonna ask it to do. If it is false, if they don't equal to each other, then it's gonna break. It's not gonna go into the while loop. So now while the user response equals to true, we want to ask the user its age. So we're gonna call the ask user function, and it's gonna return us the age. Again, remember, when you declare any variable inside a for loop or a method, the variable only exists inside that method. Once the method has been closed, the value doesn't exist, the variable doesn't exist. After we have returned the variable age, it doesn't exist anymore. So we can create another age variable. This is different variable than this, has the same name, but the box is different. This is a box. This is a brand new box. Contains the value that the function is returning. The function is not returning age. It's returning the value that the user is gonna put inside the age variable. After that is done, the variable is getting destroyed. We are creating a brand new box of the same name, and we're storing whatever the user has inputted, has given us. So now that we have stored it, we will say if age is greater than or equals to 18, then print you can vote. Then else we will say print you cannot vote. It's really simple, isn't it? We are getting the value of the age, and then we are just saying if age is greater than or equals to 18, then you can vote, else you can't vote. So let's run this program and see what happens. It is asking me for my age. I will enter 17. You cannot vote. I will enter 18. You can vote. But if you see, it's not asking me whether I want to continue or not. It's just giving me the it's just asking me for my age again and again and again and again and so on. And it's not what we want. So we want, after this has been executed, we want it to ask us whether we want to continue or not. So we will say user, so we will say response, we'll create another variable equals to input, do you want to continue? Yes or no? And then if response equals to y, then we want to say, we want to set the user response equals to true, else we want the user response to be false. So let's run it. I'll say Python while, and it will ask me for my age. I will enter 17. This is asking me for my do you want to continue. Won't, spelling's wrong. I'll say why. But if you see, it's saying name error, name y is not defined. This is because I'm running Python 2.7 something. So if you see the version, it's 2.7.10. So if you're running Mac, the default thing will be this version, this Python 2.7.10, and the input is not the right way to take input in Python 2.7.10. So instead of that, we will use Python 3. Python 3 does have the input method, does support the all string input methods. So now if I do Python 3 and enter a value, let's say, compile the program again for while py, it's asking me for my age. In Python 3, remember what I say, in Python 3, the inputs are string. Whatever I will input, it will become a string. So now the problem will be when I'm asking the age, I will be getting a string value. Now I'm storing the string value, I'm returning the string value. And when I'm comparing it with the if, I'm comparing a string with an integer value. So let's see what will happen. Indeed, it gave me not supported between instances of string and integer. I'm comparing a string and integer. So to remedy that situation, what we can do is we can return an int value. So we can convert this to an int and then return it. We'll save it and we'll go to the terminal again and we'll do this. 18. You can vote. Do you want to continue? I will say why, and it's asking for my age again. I will say 17. You cannot vote. Do you want to continue? I will say no, and it quits. This time, what we want to do is we want to enter a capital Y, and we'll hit enter. See, we intended to continue the program, but the program didn't run. It just quitted. It just stopped running the program. Why is that? Computer doesn't understand the difference between capital Y, and computer does understand the difference between capital Y and small y. It doesn't see those two things as a similar things, as the same thing that we want to do. It doesn't understand that. It does understand that it's a capital Y and it was expecting a small y. So to remedy that situation, we can use the OR operator. We can just say if response equals to small y, or response equals to a capital Y, we want to continue the program. So let's rerun the program again. I will enter my age and I will enter capital Y. Still continues. I'll hit 17. You cannot vote, and then I will say N, and it quits. Notice if I enter anything other than Y or a capital Y, the program will not run. So if I enter A, it will still quit the program. So this was a little example of while loop and if condition.